Ladies and gentlemen, as we've said before, this election is about jobs and taxes. We've been hearing from the people, we've been hearing from business owners, but the most important thing that we have to look at is job creation and job retention, and right behind that and linked to it is our level of taxes. I've been speaking with business owners, I've been speaking with ratepayers across this city, and in every conversation the issue of taxes comes up. It's the most significant thing that is hurting our efforts to create jobs. Since the huge run-up in our debt, which occurred between the years 2000 and 2003, the city's top priority has become debt reduction. It's time to turn the page. I believe that in order to create jobs, we have to create an environment where business is welcome and where business can survive. That's why I am proposing a 10% reduction to all commercial and industrial taxes and a 10% rollback in the much maligned sewer surcharge or wastewater charges charged by the city through the water bills. What I am proposing is that debt reduction will come a close second behind those initiatives. In other words, as we are able to grow our economy, we will make it a priority to repay our debt. But at the current time, lowering our taxes and increasing the number of jobs and the size of our tax base will be our first priority. Are there any questions? 10% is precisely the amount that our commercial taxes are above the average taxes in the province. Our industrial taxes are actually 50% higher, and in particular the large industrial taxes. So we've been treating our industrial tax base in particular as a cash cow, and this plant right here is an example of the cost of doing that. It's a measurable cost because we've lost about 1,700 high-paying manufacturing jobs when General Motors, for the first time in 90 years, is no longer in Windsor, and they've decided to go to a lower cost, lower tax jurisdiction in St. Catharines. So that's a clear indication of our industry voting with their feet. And the cost is measurable, and it's very high. And we just can't continue like this. We have to protect the jobs that we have now, and we have to create new jobs. And the best way of doing that is to create an environment where they can afford to come to Windsor, and Windsor can be one of their choices when they're deciding where to locate.
About the sewer surcharge, you mentioned a rollback on it. The sewer surcharge is dedicated to putting in the water mains. We know that the city has an infrastructure deficit, so how would the city pay for replacing all those water mains that are 80, 90, 100 years old?
The vast majority of the sewer surcharge is going towards repaying debt, and a great portion of it is going towards sewer main maintenance and so on. So it's not just replacing. In fact, a very, very small percentage of it is going towards water main replacement. So what I'm proposing actually is really a deferral of the speed at which we're paying down that debt. So we'll slow up the debt repayment by issuing as much debt as we need each year in order to maintain the status quo with the reductions in taxes.
How do you plan to implement the tax reduction? Just 10% across the board, October 26th?
We're talking about the 2011 tax year. The budget will start directly after the election, and what I'm proposing is that we would reduce the taxes for active commercial and industrial, so not vacant property, but where there is an active business taking place. So the regular commercial and industrial rates, which really are the employers. So the employers in town will get a 10% tax break. in order to be able to create more jobs and to save the jobs that we have now. And the rollback in the sewer surcharge, which totals about $55 million a year right now, will allow us to give a little breathing room to people until we can get a real good look at what's going on with the books. As it is now, much of what goes on at NWIN and in the other private corporations owned by the city is really a mystery to most taxpayers. So once I'm able to get a look at the books and open them up for the entire area to see, then we'll have a better idea of what we can afford.
Rick, you have a pay-as-you-grow plan. How's that different from the city's current pay-as-you-go?
Essentially what it does is it makes the tax reductions and job growth the first priority, and then repayment of the debt will be accelerated as we grow. So any new assessment that comes on, any growth in our tax base will be dedicated towards further tax reductions and reductions in our debt.
You said you wouldn't have enough money for projects like Limoges, if something else came along like that, where the government, the higher levels of government, come down with an edict that you have to do something. Are you afraid that there wouldn't be you would end up going into further debt?
No, I'm quite convinced that there's sufficient room within the city's current revenue stream to be able to handle this type of shift in priorities, and I believe that in fact we will be able to continue paying down our debt as we go. It just won't be quite as aggressive, and we won't be asking our mothers and grandmothers to pay down debt that really can be supported over the life of some of these assets.
Aren't you concerned that you'll be putting too much of a burden on the residential taxpayer, because there's only a certain amount of taxes within the tax pie? If you take it out of one sector, it has to be made up in another sector. In this case, it would be residential. We're going to put more burden on the residential sector and take it away from commercial and industrial.
I am proposing absolutely no increase to residential taxes. I believe they're also too high. It's simply that the first priority has to be job creation so that we can all afford to live here in Windsor, and thus my proposal does not include any increases in taxes. It simply is a shift in priorities from debt repayment towards job creation.
By slowing up the rate that we pay down the debt and taking the emphasis on that, are you concerned that that could affect the city's credit rating and in turn their ability to borrow? If, like Patty says, we have a governmental situation.
The largest concern that I would have with the city's debt rating would be a continued loss in our industrial sector, commercial base. So if our tax base continues to shrink as it has been, then no amount of debt reduction is going to save us from a reduction in our rating.